Hello, welcome, and namaste. My name's Lucy, and this Yin class will focus on two things. First of all, it is designed for women who are menopausal or post-menopausal, with all the accompanying conditions that can go with that life stage, including insomnia, hot or cold flushes, brain fog, memory impairment. So circulatory problems can be an issue, and so can joint problems. So you can get stiffness in the joints, you can get reduced mobility of the joints, tightening and dryness, and also things like osteoporosis. So bone density can begin to be impaired during this life stage. And this is something that yoga can really help with. And the second thing that this class allows or benefits is cases of grief and overwhelm. And my focus is the ecological emergency, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, but also the fragmentation and attitude polarization that takes place in human societies. And these include as well our own sense of being isolated or overwhelmed. So I want to invite you to begin by coming into Balasana, and you can use props, of course, and obviously as much as you like. You can, if you've got issues with the ankles, you might want to put a blanket between your buttocks and your heels, or even underneath the ankles, if that feels more comfortable. We're folding forwards, so we want the contact to begin at the base of the abdomen and at the top of the thighs, folding forwards over the thighs. And it may be that you also have blood pressure issues. If that's the case, I don't have a bolster, I have a zafu. So it's a bit lower, so I can supplement that with blocks and even use the blanket on top of the blocks to create a support. So I'm folding myself forwards and then using this as a support for the forehead. So this is one variation, keeping the head higher than the heart if that's necessary. And for me personally, that's not necessary. I don't need any props in this position. So I'm just going to come into the full position with the arms alongside the body and gradually bringing the forehead down onto the floor. And when we get into position, then we can begin to take the attention inwards and just notice that the back of the body is being lengthened, the vertebrae are being stretched away from one another, and the fingers can curl more naturally. And the breath is quite soft, quite constricted. You can breathe into the back ribs a little, but there's no need to force the breath as we stay here with the forehead on the floor now, releasing, relaxing, and taking the attention inwards. And just notice what thoughts come up. And see if you can allow this to be a nurturing, self-caring, self
compassionate time for yourself. As I'm silent for a while and you keep the attention, send the attention inwards. Send your intention for the practice towards your own self-care. Now to come out of the posture, we're just going to bring the hands underneath the shoulders, the palms can press down evenly on the ground, and we can come back up to Vajrasana, the thunderbolt position, just for a moment, opening the front of the body and noticing the effect of that compression on the abdominal area. Noticing the spine, noticing the head balancing on the top vertebra. And we'll come forwards to hands and knees. We'll do our next posture, or sequence of postures really, which is cat-cow. So obviously, again, you can modify this if there's injury in the wrists. You can begin by swaying gently and making sure that the wrists feel comfortable enough to support the body like this. If that's not the case, if there's injury in the wrists, carpal tunnel syndrome, you can make fists as one alternative. You can take the hands wider or take the fingers to point outwards. You can take the knees underneath the hips, and again you can support underneath the knees, have the feet in plantar flexion, and you can also, of course, support the wrists or the hands with blocks. If that takes the pressure off, experiment with different positions. And of course you can also have the blocks if you want to under the knees. I'm again not going to use any props myself for this because I find it quite comfortable to sway for a moment, find the center point between the wrists and between the knees. Feel the spine evenly supported, have the head in line with the rest of the spine, notice the breath. And begin to lengthen the breath, breathing through the nostrils, if at all possible. And then beginning by looking forward, pushing the chin forward slightly. If you've got neck injuries, obviously you're not going to push the chin forwards. You're going to continue to look down between the hands and just push the tailbone up. And now you're doing the opposite of what you did in Balasana. Instead of compressing the internal organs of the abdomen. You're now stretching the space of the abdomen, and you're also stretching the space at the front of the chest. If that's possible, you can open the area between the shoulder blades, so push the shoulder blades together behind the back, draw the heart forwards. If it's possible to draw the chin forwards as well, then you will stimulate the thyroid, which is extremely important as a practice if it's available to you, if there's no neck injury during menopause or post-menopause. Stimulating the thyroid can help with metabolism regulation. So look forwards if you can. You can even look up or close the eyes and imagine looking up at the space between the eyebrows. Push the tailbone up, open the chest as much as possible. Inhale and exhale here a few times. Get stretch around the chest, around the abdomen, really extending, flexing the spine, and extending the front of the body. And then reverse, tuck the tailbone under, around the spine. If you begin with the tailbone, begin with the base of the spine for each part of this movement, it can really give you a sense of the wave of motion going through the body, and then you can feel the wave of emotion going through the body. So bring the chin in, last, stretch the neck, really round, lift the abdomen, lift the pelvic floor, squeeze and draw the abdomen in and up, draw the belly button towards the spine, and you'll focus here as you keep breathing gently on the inhalation. You can focus on the exhalation here. Just a few breaths here, and then we'll work with the breath, moving as you inhale, tailbone first.
Exhale, tailbone first.
Continue like this in your own time for about 10 breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Keep the breath nice and long, but you don't need to keep pace with me. And of course,
You're as young as your spine is flexible.
and we'll finish this series with one long inhalation and holding.
The spine flexed. Chin pushing forward, shoulder blades coming together behind the back. Lean forward slightly if you want to. Keep breathing. Gently feel the stretch. Push down through the shins and the fronts of the feet as well as the hands. And then tuck the tailbone under, round the spine as much as possible.
Bring the chin in towards the chest and hold here for a few breaths. Good, come back to neutral. And we can take the knees wide for wide or active balasana. Cross one big toe over the other. See if you can remember which big toe you put on top this time, so that if you practice next time you can reverse which big toe you put on top. Again, you can use props as you want to. Between the heels and the buttocks is one option. You can even take a block and put it under each knee if you want to take the knees wider to protect the knees, and it slightly lifts the knees. Obviously you can use blanket, a block, anything that helps. Slowly come forwards. Again, if you have high blood pressure, you're going to keep the head higher than the heart. You'll feel the stretch in the inner groins, and this is really beneficial for women to get the circulation going in the, and for men, in the groin, genital, lower abdominal, pelvic area. There's so many benefits to opening the hips, including emotional release. So as you come forwards, you may want to pause, take stock. Make sure you don't lose the contact between the heels and the hips. Make sure you haven't walked the knees so far apart that you're getting strain in the groins. You want to feel a gentle stretch. So if you need to, bring the knees in slightly and then reaching the arms forwards. Again, you're going to stay quietly here for 15 to 20 breaths. The forehead resting on the floor. Again, you can bend the elbows, make fists, rest the forehead on the fists if you want to. And just keep the attention coming inwards. And you might be able to come a little further forwards. You don't need to breathe deeply. You simply need to be aware of where the stretch is taking place and soften around that area. So you can slowly lift the head and begin to walk the hands backwards. And there are always 4 stages to any Yin asana experience. There's the experience of going into the posture, the experience of becoming still in the posture, and then the experience of finding the edge. Perhaps that might mean moving further into the posture. And then of course there's the release. So that means that the middle 2 stages, stillness and finding the edge, are stages you can play with. Gradually walk the knees back in towards the center. I'm going to come down onto our backs on the mat. This sequence is only going to last about 40 minutes, so I'm only going to put a very few postures in, so you can come down and have a belt handy. Gather our props up and put them neatly to one side. Very important to keep a sense of order while practicing. And of course you can use a blanket underneath the hips if you want to. It's quite nice, or underneath the shoulders. It's also nice to get more sense of openness in the chest. So you're going to have your belt handy, come back onto the elbows and slowly come back down, drawing the shoulder blades together behind the back and straightening the legs in a brief Shavasana. Just a few breaths here. And then you can bring the legs closer together, push the heels away, draw the arms alongside the body. Bring the chin down slightly. Take a breath or 2 here. And then bring the right knee, bend the right knee and bring the right knee in towards the chest. And if you feel that you need to, you can bend the left leg, have the sole of the left foot on the floor. If it's not helpful having a prop, and in my case it's not particularly helpful, you can just take the prop to one side, but you might want to have a blanket underneath the head or underneath the chest. If it's possible to have that extended left leg or left leg extended, then explore that. You can take the right knee across and out to the side slightly. Explore the mobility of the hip and the pelvis a little, very gently. And then you're going to loop the belt around the foot and extend the leg up to the ceiling. And make sure there's a micro bend in the knee, that you're not overextending the knee at any point. But I'm going to wrap my hands around the belt and just hang here. And again, 15 to 20 breaths. Bring the chin down slightly. And because the chest is open, the abdomen has plenty of space, you can increase the depth of the breath if you want. This is a really nice way of releasing or bringing to mind what is going on for you and creating any grief, any trauma. Just allow yourself to feel that you're allowed to process this. There's plenty of space. You're giving yourself breathing space as you feel space begin to develop at the back of the leg and the hamstrings and the calves, pushing the heel away. Now we'll stay here for another 10 or 12 breaths in silence. And this is actually a lovely pose to stay in for a little bit longer if you want to. And if there's any strain in the hands, you can take the elbows down onto the floor and you can just keep the chest open. That's a nice alternative. If you need to bend the knee more, then please feel free to do so. You don't need to strain. Again, you're just finding your edge. When you're ready to release, simply bend the knee, hug the knee back in, release the sole of the foot onto the floor, and straighten the leg. And you might want to rock side to side slightly. Make sure that you feel that the hips and the shoulders are aligned. And if you've got lower back pain, then you're probably best to keep the knees bent the whole time when you're on your back, and even to support the back of the pelvis a little bit. You can check with your legs straight whether you can take your hand all the way under. You should be able to only take your hand halfway under if you've got a normal curve in the low back. So make sure that you're not exaggerating the curve in the low back. You might need to tuck the tailbone under slightly. Draw the shoulder blades closer together behind the back. Even yourself up before you go to the other side. And again, bending that left knee in towards the chest to begin with. Check to see whether or not you need to bend that right leg. It's absolutely up to you. Taking the knee out to the side and across. And like most of us in the later part of our lives, I have acquired some injuries, so I have an injury at this side, so I'm going to focus more on this side. We need to be kinder to ourselves on the places where we've got injuries, rather than considering them a weakness. Consider them an opportunity to exercise more compassion towards ourselves. So I need to move more gently on this side. When you're ready, loop the belt around the foot. Take one side of the belt in each hand. You can wrap the hands around the belt if that feels good. If it doesn't, keep the hands soft. Just extend the leg up. The elbows can be on the floor. The shoulders are broad. Shoulders away from the ears. Neck long, chin down slightly. Chest open. And again, I like this action of wrapping the hands around the belt and just hanging out here.
not worrying too much about perfection. And when you're ready, allow yourself to go quiet. Take the attention inward, focus on where the stretch is happening, but also be aware of everything else that's happening. Make room. You might have noticed I took some deeper breaths, but I didn't breathe deeply every time. So 15 or 10, 12 or 15 breaths here. And slowly, gently, you can straighten the leg completely for a moment if you want to, before you release the belt. Put it to one side. Bring the knee back in towards the chest for a moment. And then release the foot onto the floor. And again, you can straighten the legs. Feel yourself back into Shavasana for a moment. So we want to get a bit of openness in the chest now. So we'll come over onto our sides. Roll over onto your side. It's really nice to lie on the right side. I'm turning onto the left side to face the camera, but the right side gives you space around the heart. And then you can push up to sitting. And from sitting, we can come into Anhatasana, the heart melting pose. So back onto hands and knees. Perhaps this time use something underneath the knees, a bit of support underneath the knees. Again, if you've got high blood pressure, you can do this posture against a wall. So I'll just demonstrate that briefly. Come against the wall. Hands are about shoulder width apart. You can bend the knees and drop the chest down towards the wall. I'm doing it slightly lower so that you can see me on the camera. Normally you'd have the hands higher than the head, but you want to keep the head above the heart. Get this sense of opening through the chest. If you're doing this on the floor, your knees can be supported, your feet are in dorsal flexion, walking the hands forwards and then bringing the forehead down onto the floor. We'll just stay here for about 10 breaths. You can always bring the elbows down onto the floor if you need to release any tightness in the shoulders. And I have to admit that I've been doing this practice quite a lot
recently, melting the heart towards the floor, and it's really eliminated stiffness from my shoulders. But if you need to take the arms wider or even bring the elbows down onto the floor, but if you practice this regularly without strain, then it can really benefit. You're melting your heart. You can even bring the chin onto the floor if that's available to you. I'll be quiet for the next 8 breaths. And then slowly lift up the head, walk the hands back. Come back to Vajrasana for a moment. And we're going to finish with a spinal twist on the floor and then Shavasana. So again, come back onto your backs so you can sit, and you can have the blanket or something underneath the upper spine, the thoracic spine, back of the rib cage. It's nice to explore having some support to get more openness in the rib cage, and then bend the knees more. You can even bring the knees in towards the chest, hug them in towards the chest, and then extend the arms out to the sides, shoulder height, and the palms can face up towards the ceiling or down towards the floor. Up towards the ceiling keeps a nice openness in the shoulders. So inhale here and exhale, and just drop the knees over towards the right and look towards the left. And again, come to your edge. Very gently use the breath to release tension. You can close the eyes. Now I'm doing this for slightly shorter than a yin practice really merits, but you get the gist of the experience in this shorter practice. It's still beneficial. Bring the head back to the center. Press the right knuckles on the floor. Push the knees back to the center and give them a hug. And then take the arms out to the sides again. Make sure that the hips and shoulders feel aligned. You can shuffle your hips. You can even put the soles of the feet on the floor if you need to make sure that you've centered the hips. And then let the knees drop to the other side. That's all we're doing. Really gentle, achievable spinal twist. Great for realigning the spine. A few breaths in silence here. You can breathe more deeply a couple of times. And then when you're ready, bring the head back to the center, chin down slightly, press on the knuckles of the left hand, push the knees back to the center, and again give them a hug. Now you can put the soles of the feet on the floor, and you can come into traditional Shavasana with the legs straight, the feet falling out to the sides, palms facing up, shoulder blades close together behind the back. Or, if you want to, you can practice Baddha Konasana, Supta Baddha Konasana, with the knees dropping out to the sides. If this is comfortable for you, this is a really lovely way, again, of getting a stretch in the inner thighs. And if it's comfortable for you, it's also very relaxing. And you get this sense of openness in the chest, openness in the hips. So it can be a real boon for women. But if you need to, you can support the outside of the thighs with blocks. And that's one alternative, so that you're not straining, you're not feeling any strain in the groin area. It's a nice alternative. And you can make sure that the belly feels nice and soft and relaxed. The hips feel open and even. You're not getting any strain in the low back. And palms face up. Draw the shoulder blades closer together behind the back. Lengthen the neck. And even for a moment, to take one hand onto the heart and one onto the belly. And take a few breaths like that, slightly deepening the breath. And then releasing the hands, palms facing up, fingers curled naturally, chin down slightly. Run the tongue between the teeth and the lips. Swallow once or twice, lightly sealing the eyes and the mouth closed. Listening externally and then listening internally in silence for just a few moments. And to complete the practice, to come out of this brief Shavasana, begin by gently moving the head from side to side. And you can take the head all the way over. Feel a stretch in the neck, one side and then the other. You can do that again, moving slowly. Being kinder. And then support the knees, bring them back into the center. You can move the props out of the way. Stretch the arms up overhead if you like. Link the fingers, push the palms away if that feels good. Focus on being gentle. Stretch, yawn if you feel like yawning, and sigh as you bring the arms down. Again, rolling over onto the right side is preferable, but explore, experiment. Take a breath or two here. Use the left palm to push yourself, and then the right palm to push yourself upright. And neatly take the blocks or the props to one side. Sit in an easy cross-legged position, or if you want to use Padmasana or Ardha Padmasana, just for a moment. And draw the spine upright. Adopt a mudra with the hands. Sit for a moment. Bring the palms together in front of the chest. Bow the head forwards. And see if you can develop a sense of appreciation and gratitude for all those who have brought this long lineage which you are expressing in your actions now. Reaching back through the ages and giving thanks. Gratitude and appreciation. You can even silently chant Om 3 times. Humbly raise the head. Namaste.